liberal democracy.
More liberal democracy,
or
yes.
Manufactured democracy.
Yeah, I'm going to keep on reinforcing this because it's important for people to understand that liberal democracy does mean we can do whatever we want if enough people go along with it. And we talked about the narrative earlier, and now we're going to have a look at the actual democratic process itself, which is also being transformed and apparently completely up for grabs. So let's head back to Demos and hear about the WAVES programme.
Our project is called WAVES. It is, we believe, the largest trial of digital democracy ever done in the UK. What it aims to do is bring people together to tackle contentious local issues and strengthen trust in local government.
At the very beginning of WAVES, I was inspired by the digital democrats of Taiwan. They use new technology to find consensus in even very polarised topics and to use that consensus to turn it into actually new law and regulation. They showed that it could be done.
It's going to do this by using new tech and AI to create a process that will make it easier, cheaper and quicker for local governments to involve people in discussions about a specific issue, to find consensus between people, and use this to shape new decisions that are going to be made by local government to really improve people's lives.
For me, democracy means something beyond elections and beyond referenda. It means actually involving people meaningfully in decisions that really affect and shape their lives. Now, that is easy to say and it is very, very hard to do. And it's something that we have to constantly problem solve for, constantly adapt and innovate on in order to recapture what democracy really can do for each new generation.
We're going to trial WAVES in 2 local governments over the next 18 months. Each government is selecting an issue that's important to them and to their public. And what we're going to do is use WAVES to bring people together to work through the challenge. We'll then develop and iterate WAVES through these 2 trials to see what's possible, and then support dozens of other local councils to learn about the process so they can use it in the coming years.
So WAVES is about technology, but technology about bringing people together, even in polarised and angry debates. But it also means using technology for deliberation and decision making. And that is about finding consensus between people, even when that consensus is not immediately obvious.
Democracy, it means everything to me. It underpins how we function well together as a society. But the problem is it's not working for people right now. People are losing trust in politics and political institutions, so we need to radically renew the way democracy is done.
So, Ben, democracy is failing. We're not going to sit back and think, hang on a minute, why is it failing? We're just going to get on and move it to a technologically based solution. You're not going to actually look at the problem, what's causing the problem. You're just going to move it on to technology.
Yes. And let's ignore the fact that 30 years of demos policy initiatives is probably the thing that's making democracy in the country break, right? And they talk about using technology to break through contentious issues, like we're going to destroy your country and you don't like it. So we're going to build this AI platform to ram you through this process of transformation that we're going to insist on. I mean, it's just ludicrous. And who's behind it? So this was Miriam Levin, Director of Participatory Programs at Demos. And she's been on the column before in a supporting role. So regular viewers will remember this image. This is from a Demos event held about 18 months ago now. You can see Miriam there on the left-hand side in the red shoes, sitting alongside Georgia Gould, who was at that point Mayor of Camden. She's now running the Cabinet Office, right? So these women are extraordinarily powerful and influential that you've got sitting in front of you here. Third in from the left-hand side in the black and blue dress, that's Lisa Witter from the Apolitical Foundation, who are currently completely transforming Cabinet Office, central government at the behest of Georgia Gould. So that's basically client and partner there. And then Claudia Chalice from DemocracyNext, who was at this event to talk about new governance models that can help break through deadlocks and give legitimacy to hard decisions that require trade-offs. We can just zoom in on that. There you go. Now, it basically means our technology will force you to do whatever we want. Right? That's what these systems are for, ultimately. They want to get you to sign up to things that you would never sign up to. And they're going to use these systems to help them do that because, interestingly, if they actually tried to debate with you around facts and issues, they wouldn't be able to win the argument. And apparently that's our fault for just being intractable and men, probably. I'm sure there's a whole bunch of that stuff going on behind the scenes as well. And to kind of counter that, they're going to introduce these new systems. And that's all about citizens' assemblies, participatory democracy, none of which is actually particularly democratic, so they'll come out and talk about wanting to defend democracy, but actually what that means is these highly stage managed, manipulated and controlled, basically show elections. Like, these aren't real elections. And if we can just flip that back onto screen quickly, you can see that in the process of deliberation, which goes from the left to the right, the green bit is where all of the artificial intelligence is going to be introduced in order to control the process and ultimately to control the outcomes, right? To deliver what it is that Claudia Chalice and Georgia Gould and Demos and everyone else involved in this thing want. And what does that actually relate to? Well, here's an example. So this came out a couple of days ago. This is the MIMBY majority. So this was actually authored by Miriam Levin. This is a new Demos report. It's about unlocking house building with early and representative public participation in planning. So this is about helping the government deliver on its promise to build 1.5 million new homes in England by 2029, which means they need to build 1,000 homes a day, which I don't think that that's technically possible to do that. Certainly not from the position we're in right now. And but they seem to think that if they can just get the technology and the decision making and the legislation in place, then they can just magically create all of these new homes, bulldoze through planning legislation, completely ignored the very valid concerns of huge swathes of the population, right? I mean, that's ultimately what they're looking to do here. And we'll provide a link to this. You should go and read it. And what they're talking about is, they say MIMBY. So obviously a NIMBY is not in my backyard. MIMBY is maybe in my backyard if Demos get their hands around me and force me through one of their processes, ultimately. And interestingly, in the introduction to the report, they've brought out a new term, which is the emergency crisis, which doesn't even relate to anything. This is just crisis, the crisis. Everything we got to change everything because of some poorly defined crisis that we probably have just made up. Actually, to be honest with you, ladies, who's behind it? So we've got. Another bunch of familiar faces, a few sort of niche technology companies on the right-hand side, but also New Local, who I've spoken about recently. Going to have to bring them back into the discussion over the coming weeks. They're absolutely crucial to what's happening in local government. Demos are obviously there. Camden Council, she mentioned she's working with 2 local governments. I'm sure Camden Council is one of them. And obviously Georgia Gould, absolutely slap bang in the centre of the Demos ecosystem. She was at an event last year basically saying, as Cabinet Office Minister, that when the rules at the centre are blocking services from delivering for people, we just need to change those rules. Yeah, we can do whatever we want, as long as enough people go along with it, right? You have to understand the mindset with these people. It's all being driven from here. So Democracy Next is backed by Rockefeller Foundation, Open Societies Foundation, and then the Open Societies Foundation takes us into Daniel Sachs and that whole funding ecosystem of people like this. This is Paul Alarcon, who thinks that the world was created for me. There he is. There you go, a little star up there on the left-hand side. And then just finally, who was the last guy in the video? This was Carl Miller. Really odd turn of phrase that he used there. He said, and we use that consensus to turn it into actually new law and legislation, which doesn't mean anything. And that made the final cut. So I shudder to think how bad the offcuts were. And he also said that he was inspired by the digital Democrats of Taiwan. And at that point, we are straight off to Crazy Town. Let's have a look at this.
The most interesting thing in tech, I'm here with Audrey Tong, the first digital minister of Taiwan. And Audrey is responsible for what I think is one of the most profound and important ideas I've heard in AI. And it's the notion that there's a vertical race in which lots of powerful companies are building potentially self-replicating AI that will bring great prosperity and also potentially great troubles to the world. And then there's a horizontal race, a more open source, smaller communities of people, academics, tinkerers, building tools, building ethics, building systems, building explainability in different models that will then be absorbed into the larger models, and that this is the way that will end up with extremely powerful AI that is very good for humanity. And Audrey and I were talking about it today, and then Audrey added another thing which I thought was just truly beautiful, which is a prayer. that she came up with in 2016 as a job description, but that also still guides her work and her thinking. And so I thought today, Audrey, you could give this prayer to this video series.
Definitely. Yeah, when I became the digital minister in 2016, in Taiwan, 数位 means both digital but also plural. So it's kind of wordplay that when we look at the vertical path, which is called the technological singularity, let's think about the horizontal path of plurality. And so my job description goes like this. When we see the Internet of Things, let's make it an Internet of beings. When we see virtual reality, let's make it a shared reality. When we see machine learning, let's make it collaborative learning. When we see user experience, let's make it about human experience. And whenever we hear that a singularity is near, let us always remember the plurality is here.
Oh, I love that so much. Profound and wonderful words from Audrey Tong. Thank you so much.
Thank
See you
you.
tomorrow.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for
Audrey,
that.
isn't she lovely?
I would just like to say, Ben, of course, a lot of people listen to that and their immediate reaction is what utter nonsense. And yes, that may be true. However, these are the people influencing the policy which is doing this immense damage across our world and our lives. So we need to know who the people are. We need to understand the language that they're using, and quite often we need to be able to interpret that language in order to understand what they are really talking about, because they are masters, credit where it's due, at the use of language to hide what they're really doing.
And that's the top level. Yeah. Those are the people really pulling the strings, and we'll talk much more about those two in the coming weeks.
Okay, Ben, thank you very much for that. I can see we're going to have a very packed UK